Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take those huge figures from history, from pop culture, and we really dig into the sources to figure out, what actually made them tick.
Mhm.
Today, we are diving deep into the life of Charles Monroe Schulz. I mean, this is the man whose simple drawings pretty much define the emotional landscape of the whole 20th century.
Yeah, and when you say huge figure, Schulz, he's almost in his own category when it comes to scale. Think about it. He drew 17,897 peanut strips.
17,000, wow.
Yeah, over almost 50 years. And that number, it translates into this incredible global reach. At its peak, Peanuts was running daily in like 2,600 newspapers
Okay.
across 75 countries, translated into 21 languages. And the money, it was generating over $1 billion a year at one point.
$1 billion annually. From a comic strip about, let's be honest, a perpetually depressed kid and his very imaginative dog. It's wild.
It is. But the core of it, the thing that makes it last, it's not really the billions, is it?
No, definitely not. It's those small moments, right? The quiet failures, the neuroses, the unrequited love. It's this fundamental contradiction.
And that's exactly where we want to start this deep dive. Our mission today, using the sources we've got, is to really uncover the man behind that melancholy.
Right.
The guy nicknamed Sparky. His uncle gave him that name, after Sparkplug the horse in the old Barney Google comic.
Ah, okay. I didn't know that detail. Sparky.
Yeah, Sparky. We want to understand how his own life, his personal struggles, his time in the military, his relationships, how all of that became the surprisingly complex emotional bedrock for Charlie Brown and Snoopy and, well, everyone else in the gang.
So to really get Charlie Brown, we kind of have to start with Schulz himself, back in Minneapolis and St. Paul. The sources really paint a picture of these deep Midwestern roots. He was the only child of Carl Schulz, who was a barber, worked hard, and Dina, his mother, a housewife, German and Norwegian background. And reading about it, his childhood sounds, well, pretty quiet, actually, like a lot of early 20th century Midwestern upbringing.
Yeah. It does sound quiet on the surface, but what jumps out right away is this really singular, powerful drive he had towards art, even as a little kid.
Right.
His love for drawing started super early, and his first muse, interestingly, wasn't a beagle at all. It was the family dog, Spike.
Spike. And Spike was apparently quite the character himself. What's amazing is that Spike actually gave Schulz his very first taste of publication. A really surprising bit of early validation.
It was more than just validation. It was kind of a bizarre claim to fame, really. So in 1937, Schulz draws this picture of Spike.
Okay.
But it's not just like a cute dog picture. He drew it specifically to show that Spike ate weird stuff, non-food stuff, pins, tacks, things like that.
He ate pins and tacks. Seriously.
Apparently. So Schulz sends this drawing off to Ripley's Believe It or Not.
No way. And they published it.
They did, credited just to Sparky, his drawing detailing his dog's unique diet. It's just a fantastic little story, isn't it? Your first national publication is basically about your dog eating hardware.
That is brilliant. But then almost immediately, you get this classic Schulzian contrast, right? This moment of rejection that feels like it could be lifted straight from a peanut strip.
Exactly. His own high school, St. Paul Central High, actually rejected his drawings for the yearbook.
Ouch.
Yeah. So you have to imagine him, right? He's maybe 15, gets this validation from a huge national feature like Ripley's, but his own classmates, his peers at school, basically say no thanks.
That contrast.
Yeah.
It just seems to set the stage perfectly for the adult Schulz, doesn't it? This guy who achieves unbelievable global fame, but seems to have always identified with that kid who's left out, the awkward one.
Absolutely. It really speaks to that idea that, massive success doesn't just magically erase self-doubt or those feelings of not quite fitting in, that sting of local rejection. It often sticks around.
Yeah, I can see that.
Though, the high school did eventually sort of make amends much later, like 60 years later. They put a 5-foot Snoopy statue in the school office, a kind of retrospective tribute.
Better late than never, I suppose. So after high school, he knew he needed to hone his craft, right? He took a correspondence course from art instruction schools. But this period, while he's trying to build his skills, it gets hit by this really profound personal tragedy.
Yeah, this is a really crucial piece of understanding Schulz, and it definitely lends weight to that persistent sadness you see in Charlie Brown. His mother, Dina, she died from cervical cancer in February 1943.
Oh, wow.
He was incredibly close to her. He was actually with her at home when she passed away. And he talked about it later, quite often actually, this deep sadness he carried that she never got to see any of his work published professionally, syndicated.
God, that's horrible.
She was the one who really believed in him from the start, his anchor, and she was gone just before he started to get any real recognition.
So the man who creates the most successful comic strip ever carries this constant knowledge that his first, maybe most important fan missed the whole thing. Wow. And then, right after his mother's death, he gets drafted. World War II.
Yeah, talk about turmoil. Drafted late in '42, he ends up serving as a staff sergeant with the 20th Armored Division over in Europe. Quite a shift for a shy kid from Minnesota.
Definitely.
He was a squad leader on a .50 caliber machine gun team. His division saw action near the very end of the war, and he was actually very proud of earning the combat infantry badge.
But the story he tells about actual combat, it sounds, well, almost like a Peanuts setup itself. He talked about this one time. He actually had a chance to fire his machine gun in a real combat situation.
That's the one. He gets his chance, lines up the shot, squeezes the trigger, and nothing.
He forgot to load it.
Forgot to load
Yeah,
it. Oh my God. That is the ultimate Charlie Brown omen, isn't it? Just perfect, humiliating, but ultimately nobody got hurt.
Exactly. He missed his one big shot, but the sources say the German soldier he was aiming at just surrendered anyway. Probably had no idea Schulz had messed up so spectacularly. Wow. The highest irony. Potential for huge success or maybe tragedy. Just completely undercut by a simple human mistake. That missed shot feeling seems like it permeates the entire strip.
It really does. So after the war, he comes back to Minnesota. He finds work doing lettering for a Catholic comic magazine called Timeless Topics.
Okay.
And then comes the job that really changes things, the one that lays the groundwork for Peanuts. He goes back to the Art Instruction School's AIS in July '46, this time as an instructor, grading student work sent through the mail.
Right, grading correspondence lessons.
And he worked there for several years. Now, this job, even though it might sound kind of mundane, was absolutely critical.
Why that?
Well, two big reasons. First, it kept him completely immersed in drawing and cartooning. He had to constantly analyze what worked, what didn't in other people's drawing.
It made him really think about the craft.
Exactly. And second, maybe even more importantly, the people he met there. They became the cast of Peanuts.
Ah, the real-life inspirations.
Precisely. And it was during this time at AIS that he launched his first regular strip, Lil Folks. It ran weekly in the St. Paul Pioneer Press from 1947 to 1950, just single-panel jokes, mostly.
So he's developing his style, exploring kids, talking about adult stuff.
Yeah, but what's really key about Lil Folks is how fluid the characters still were. He actually used the name Charlie Brown in 4 different gags in that strip.
But not the Charlie Brown.
Not yet. It wasn't the single character we know. He used the name for 3 different boys, apparently, and one time for a kid who was just like buried in sand up to his neck.
Oh.
And there was a dog that looked a bit like a Snoopy prototype, but with a much shorter nose. He was still figuring it all out.
Okay, so we've got the artist. He's shy, carrying this personal melancholy. He understands that humor often comes from bad things happening, as he put it. And now he's got a solid 4-panel version of his strip ready to go national. He takes it to United Feature Syndicate, UFS, in 1950. And they love it, but there's always a but, isn't there? They immediately want one big change.
Yeah, the title. They insisted he change it from Lil Folks. The Syndicate guys were worried about legal stuff. Apparently, the name was too close to some other features already out there.
So what happened?
Schulz gave them a list of other possible names, and the Syndicate picked one off that list. Peanuts.
Peanuts. And this becomes like the great professional thorn in his side for the rest of his life, right?
Yeah.
Even though he technically offered it as an option, he absolutely hated that name.
Hated it. Viscerally. He felt it was just a shallow, silly title and made it sound like, the peanut gallery at a show or just a bunch of little things scattered around. He felt it completely missed the depth he was going for.
Yeah, he's trying to explore existential dread through kids.
Yeah.
And they name it like it's for toddlers.
Exactly. He saw it as totally undignified. But despite how much he hated the name, the strip launched on October 2nd, 1950. And pretty quickly, it proved that the content was way more powerful than the title he disliked.
And that launch.
Yeah.
That was basically the start of this almost unbelievable run of pure dedication. The amount of work is just, it's hard to even comprehend. It really is.
He wrote and drew every single one. Nearly 18,000 strips. All by himself. A singular, lifelong effort that only stopped when he died.
That commitment, that daily grind, It's almost frightening to think about, maintaining that quality, that consistency for 5 decades. The Forces point out the only time reruns ever ran while he was alive was for a 5-week break
Right.
in late 1997.
5 weeks.
5 weeks to celebrate his 75th birthday. Other than that, it was basically 47 straight years of daily solo production. Incredible.
And that complete control, that wasn't just for the newspaper strip, right? When Peanuts blew up and moved to TV, especially with a Charlie Brown Christmas in '65, he kept that same iron grip.
Absolutely. That Christmas special was huge. Won an Emmy, catapulted the strip into a whole new level of pop culture consciousness, and Schulz wrote or co-wrote all the TV specials that followed, and the 4 animated movies too.
That creative control feels really important for Peanuts. It was vital. It meant that, unlike a lot of syndicated characters that get handed off and diluted over time, the core feeling of Peanuts, that specific blend of sweetness and, melancholy sarcasm, it never really got watered down by the Hollywood machine. He made sure of it.
And we sometimes forget, this wasn't the only thing he was drawing during those incredibly busy years. He had a couple of other projects going on at the same time, even if they didn't last as long.
Yeah, his output was just immense. He did have that sports-focused strip for a bit. It's Only a Game. Ran from 57 to 59.
Interesting, given how much he loved hockey later on.
Right? Maybe testing the waters. And then, maybe more surprisingly, considering his religious background, he did a gag cartoon series called Young Pillars.
Young Pillars?
Yeah, from 1956 to 65. It focused on teenagers and ran in Youth, which was a magazine linked to the Church of God.
Huh. So that gives us a little window into the kind of moral and spiritual stuff he was thinking about back then.
Definitely. Before he fully poured all those existential questions into Charlie Brown and Linus, he was also doing commercial illustration work on the side. He did the drawings for 2 of Art Linkletter's huge bestsellers, Kids Say the Darndest Things, in 57 and 61.
Makes sense, tapping into that ability to capture how kids think and talk.
And he illustrated a book of letters called Dear President Johnson in 1964. His name was just everywhere, attached to all sorts of high-profile things, but he always managed to keep Peanuts itself pure.
Okay, so now we get right to the core of it, right? How did Schulz take his own, often complicated personal life and just pour it directly onto the comics page?
Yeah, this is where the stats stop and the psychology really kicks in. What really hits me, looking through the sources, is just how much Charlie Brown was Schulz. Not just inspired by him, but almost a direct avatar.
It was definitely a self-portrait. Now, the name itself, Charlie Brown, that came from a coworker back at art instruction schools, apparently the real Charlie Brown looked nothing like the comic character.
Oh, yeah. But the personality, that shy, anxious, withdrawn feeling, that was pure Schulz. The sources are really clear that even when he was massively famous and successful, he often felt like that awkward kid on the outside looking in.
It's like that core contradiction we talked about earlier. He builds this global empire, but personally identifies with the perpetual failure.
And he knew it. He talked about it. There's that amazing quote from him where he says something like, I suppose there's a melancholy feeling in a lot of cartoonists because cartooning, like all other humor, comes from bad things happening.
Wow.
He wasn't just going for cheap laughs or slapstick. He was processing his own internal stuff, his own bad things happening.
So when we see Charlie Brown fail, the kite gets eaten by the tree again, the baseball team loses again, he can't talk to the little red-haired girl again, those aren't just random jokes.
No, they're like the daily little manifestations of that core feeling. It's actually a pretty sophisticated kind of public self-therapy played out for millions of people every day.
And that direct line from his life extends to the other characters too, right?
Right.
Grounding the whole fantasy world in something real.
Oh, absolutely. Snoopy, obviously the breakout star, he was inspired by Schulz's childhood dog, Spike, the one who ate the pins and tacks.
Right, Spike.
Now, the sources are clear. Spike was actually a pointer, not a beagle like Snoopy. But apparently, if you look at old family photos, there's a certain physical resemblance and definitely that eccentric personality that Schulz first captured way back in that Ripley's drawing.
And the level of specific detail he pulled from his life is just incredible. Like Snoopy's brother, also named Spike, who lives out in the desert near Needles, California.
Yeah, why Needles? Seems so random.
It's because the Schulz family actually lived there for a couple years, from 1928 to 1930 when Schulz was just a little kid.
Get out. Really? Yeah, they moved out there from Minnesota temporarily to help take care of a cousin who was sick and had relocated. It's this tiny, almost forgotten geographical detail from his own childhood, and decades later, boom, it becomes the home for one of his most beloved characters. It feels like every little corner of the Peanuts world has some personal memory tucked inside it.
But the personal detail that maybe shaped Charlie Brown's melancholy more than anything else, that constant sense of inadequacy, that was a little red-haired girl, wasn't it? She was the ultimate unattainable ideal.
She was very real. Her name was Donna Mae Johnson. She was an accountant at art instruction schools where Schulz worked.
Okay.
And here's the really crucial, painful timing of it all. Schulz finally worked up the courage to propose to her in June of 1950.
When he was about to hit it big.
Exactly. Just before he signed the contract with United Feature Syndicate for Peanuts, his professional life was about to explode.
And she said no.
She turned him down, married someone else pretty soon after. So here he is on the verge of this incredible success, but the thing he wants most on a personal level. Completely denied. That one specific, unrequited love, it basically became the template for Charlie Brown's romantic failures for the next 50 years.
That explains so much. It's not just random failure. It's that specific pain of success in one area right alongside total heartbreak in another.
That's why it resonates, I think. And even the smaller characters, their names came straight from his life, too. Linus and Shermy, named after his friends, Linus Moore and Sherman Plepler. Peppermint Patty, the confident, sporty girl, inspired by his cousin, Patricia Swanson. And the name itself, Peppermint Patty, apparently just came from a dish of peppermint candies he saw sitting in his house one day.
He just plucked details from everywhere.
Constantly blending reality and fiction. And maybe one of the most famous specific lines in the whole strip, Sally calling Linus her sweet baboo.
Yeah. Where did that come from? It's so quirky.
It came directly from his home life. Jean Schulz, his second wife, used to call him that as a term of endearment.
No way.
Yes. She mentioned she called him Sweet Baboo, and apparently, 6 weeks later, there it was, coming out of Sally's mouth in the comic strip. Just an almost instantaneous pipeline from his private life right into the public consciousness.
Okay, so moving from those really intimate details into the more public professional sphere, Schulz achieved such massive scale that inevitably meant dealing with huge public interest, huge amounts of money, and, well, professional rivalries.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating here is the relationship, or maybe the tension, with Jim Davis, the creator of Garfield. It seems really complex.
How so?
Well, on one side, Schulz apparently saw Davis as his biggest rival. The sources say he really disliked what he saw as Garfield's sort of low, broad appeal approach. He thought it was too commercial, too focused on easy gags.
Right, the philosophical versus the gag-a-day strip.
Exactly. And he was reportedly pretty jealous when Garfield started outselling Peanuts merchandise and becoming incredibly popular in the 80s.
Okay, so there's definite friction there.
But despite that personal feeling about the style of the comic, Schulz actually acted as a really important mentor to Jim Davis, especially on the business side of things.
That seems counterintuitive, helping your biggest rival.
It speaks volumes about Schulz's character, I think. His commitment to cartooning as a whole. He knew the business of merchandising and franchising inside and out better than almost anyone, and he shared that knowledge with Davis, gave him advice.
That's pretty generous.
But here's the really surprising detail, the one that blows me away. Davis himself says that Schulz actually helped him redesign Garfield.
What? Redesign the actual character?
Yeah. Davis was apparently struggling. The original Garfield was, much fatter, walked on all fours mostly. It was hard to animate him for TV specials or get him to do physical comedy easily. So Schulz, his main rival, apparently stepped in and sketched out a different version. Slimmer, stood up more on two legs, had that little pot belly, a version that was easier to animate and merchandise. Schulz literally helped his biggest competitor become even more commercially successful.
Wow. That's actually remarkable. Guiding someone whose work you fundamentally disagree with on an artistic level, that shows a huge dedication to the cartooning community itself.
It really does. And he showed respect for other cartoonists, too, like Rob Armstrong, who created Jumpstart. In a 1994 TV special, Schulz gave Franklin Peanut's first black character, who'd been around since '68 but never had a last name, the last name Armstrong. It was a direct public nod of respect to Rob Armstrong.
That's a classy move. And we also see his own artistic influences popping up, right? He clearly admired other creators.
Oh, yeah. He often cited guys like Milton Caniff, Terry and the Pirates, and George Harriman, Crazy Cat, real innovators of the comic strip form, and Bill Mauldin, the famous World War II cartoonist.
The Willie and Joe guy.
That's him. Snoopy actually visits Bill Mauldin in the strip every Veterans Day. It's a recurring tribute.
And his interests went beyond just comics, didn't they? He had some serious obsessions.
He did. Cinema, for one. He was famously obsessed with Orson Welles' Citizen Kane. Apparently he watched it something like 40 times.
40 times. Why Citizen Kane, do you think? What was the connection?
Well, think about it. Kane is this epic story about a hugely successful American tycoon whose vast wealth and power ultimately mask this deep emotional emptiness, this longing for a lost childhood symbolized by Rosebud.
Success masking failure to connect. That sounds familiar.
It's basically the thematic core of Peanuts, right? Professional success versus personal melancholy. His fascination ran so deep he even worked it into the strip. There's a famous one where Lucy just cruelly spoils the ending of Citizen Kane for poor Linus.
That's brilliant. Okay, so shifting from art to spirituality.
Yeah.
His relationship with faith seems just as complex as everything else about him.
Absolutely. It mirrors the strip's own philosophical depth. He was raised Lutheran, but then, as a young adult, he got really involved with the Church of God.
Who involved?
Very. Attending Bible study, going to services like 3 times a week for maybe 4 or 5 years. Later on, he taught Sunday school at a United Methodist church. So that spiritual search, that grounding, it was clearly a really significant part of his life for a long time.
And we see that directly in the strip, most famously in the Christmas special.
Definitely. A Charlie Brown Christmas. Schulz himself said that Linus, the character who carries the security blanket, represented his spiritual side. And of course, the climax of that special is Linus walking center stage and reciting the nativity story straight from the Gospel of Luke.
Such an iconic and frankly brave moment for network television back then.
It really was. But like many people, his views evolved over time. Later in life, he described himself as leaning more towards secular humanism.
What did that mean to him?
He was careful to define it. Not atheism, necessarily, but more a focus on the responsibility humans have to each other, to the world. Focusing on morality, on action, rather than strict religious doctrine.
But his wife, Jean, she offered a slightly different perspective, didn't she?
She did. She insisted he remained a deeply thoughtful and spiritual man, but one who found God, quote, mysterious, and much more complex than simple answers or easy statements could capture. That internal wrestling, that honesty about the complexity, feels very true to his work.
And that complexity came right out into the open during a challenging family situation involving his daughter, Amy.
Yeah, when Amy joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Schulz, who was already kind of wary of organized religion by that point, was apparently quite upset.
How did he react?
The sources say he told her quite directly he thought the church was a hoax, which is pretty blunt. But, and this is the crucial part, displaying that secular humanist morality he talked about, he still supported her choice. He valued their relationship, their family bond, and he recognized their shared foundation belief in Christ and the scriptures, even if they differed on the specifics of the church structure.
So again, holding two conflicting ideas at once. Skepticism about the institution, but deep support for the individual person. Classic Schulz.
Exactly. Now, heading into the 1990s, the sheer physical toll of drawing that strip day in, day out for decades, it started to catch up with him.
Right, he had health issues.
He'd had heart bypass surgery back in 1981. And then later in the 90s, he developed an essential tremor. It made his hand shake.
Was it Parkinson's?
It was sometimes mistaken for it, but no, essential tremor. You can actually see it if you look closely at his artwork from the very late strips. The lines get noticeably shakier. He used medication, beta blockers to help manage it, but it was a struggle.
And then came the diagnosis that forced the ultimate decision.
Yeah. Colon cancer, which had unfortunately spread. He announced his retirement on December 14th, 1999.
That must have been incredibly difficult for him.
Oh, profoundly. The sources really convey the pain he felt. He told Al Roker on the Today Show that the decision was hard, but ultimately the strip was being taken away from me. He'd always pictured himself drawing well into his 80s, working away in his studio.
And this brings us right back to that central, iconic image of his entire career. Charlie Brown, Lucy, and the football. People must have asked him constantly if Charlie Brown would finally get to kick it in the last strip.
Oh, all the time. And his initial response, his sort of rational, artistic judgment response, was a firm no. He said something like, "Oh no, definitely not. I couldn't have Charlie Brown kick that football. That would be a terrible disservice to him after half a century."
Because the failure was the point.
Exactly. Granting him that success would completely undermine the entire premise, the melancholy heart of the strip.
But when it came time to actually sign that very last strip, His feelings were different, weren't they?
Yeah. Completely different. He talked about holding back tears as he signed that final panel. And instead of thinking about the artistic integrity of the failure trope, he was thinking.
Yeah.
He was thinking, that poor kid. He never even got to kick the football. What a dirty trick. He never had a chance to kick the football.
Oh, man.
In that final moment, the empathy, the sadness for his own creation just completely overwhelmed the professional logic. It's the ultimate testament to how deeply he felt that character's enduring struggle.
And then, tragically, he passed away very soon after.
Yeah. He died of a heart attack on February 12, 2000. And the very last original Peanuts strip, the one he'd already drawn and signed, was published the very next day. It completed the cycle. And crucially, United Feature Syndicate honored his wish. No one else would ever draw the strip. His artistic journey ended with his life.
So let's talk a bit about the sheer breadth of his legacy. It goes so far beyond just the comic pages. The honors he received, both during his life and after, they're incredibly diverse. They touch government, sports, even space travel. The list is pretty staggering. He got the Congressional Gold Medal posthumously in 2000. That's one of the highest civilian honors the U.S. gives out. And within the comics world itself, the tribute was massive. Over 40 syndicated cartoonists, including his old rival Jim Davis, all incorporated Peanuts characters into their own strips on the same day, May 27, 2000, as a collective homage.
That's incredible respect from his peers. But maybe the most surprising part of his legacy, for people who only know the strip, is his deep, deep connection to ice sports.
Right. This wasn't just a casual hobby for him.
Not at all. He actually owned the Redwood Empire Ice Arena up in Santa Rosa, California. It was like his second home. And he started and hosted Snoopy's Senior World Hockey Tournament there every year.
He was seriously into hockey.
So much so that he was inducted into the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame in 1993. And he'd already received the Lester Patrick Trophy back in '81 for his contributions to hockey in the U.S. Think about that. A cartoonist honored at the highest levels of American hockey.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just hockey, right? Figure skating, too.
Figure skating, too. His daughter, Amy, was a figure skater, and she actually modeled for the skating TV special She's a Good Skate, Charlie Brown. And years later, in 2007, Schulz himself was inducted into the U.S. Figure Skating Hall of Fame.
Wow. Hall of Famer in 2 different ice sports, basically because of his comic strip work. That's unique.
It has to be. Even his hobbies got immortalized in a way. He loved playing contract bridge.
Bridge, okay.
Yeah, he was a keen player. So in 1997, the American Contract Bridge League, the ACBL, actually gave Snoopy and Woodstock the honorary rank of Life Master.
Snoopy is a bridge life master. That's fantastic. It just shows how Peanuts permeated absolutely every corner of American culture.
It really did. But maybe the highest honor, and the one that really speaks to the strip's ability to connect with serious, high-stakes endeavors, is the connection to NASA and the space program.
Ah, yes, the Apollo 10 mission.
Exactly. Back in 1969, NASA was already using the Peanuts characters for safety posters and morale boosting. For the Apollo 10 mission, the dress rehearsal for the moon landing the command module was officially named Charlie Brown.
And the lunar module.
The lunar module, the part that actually flew down close to the moon's surface, was named Snoopy.
Incredible. Charlie Brown and Snoopy went to the moon, essentially.
They did, and the connection continues. Astronauts wear this communications cap, the headset thing under their helmets.
Yeah.
It's universally nicknamed the Snoopy cap because its shape, white with black ear coverings, looks like Snoopy's head.
Ah, perfect.
And even today, NASA gives out the Silver Snoopy Award. It's a really prestigious internal award given by astronauts to employees and contractors who've done outstanding work for flight safety or mission success. Snoopy is literally a symbol of safety and excellence at NASA.
His physical legacy is still very present, too, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. If you fly into Sonoma County, California, where he lived and worked for so long, you fly into the Charles M. Schulz Sonoma County Airport, and the airport's logo, it features Snoopy flying on top of his doghouse.
Of course it does.
And back in his hometown, St. Paul, Minnesota, they started this public art tradition called Peanuts on Parade back in 2000. It kicked off with 101 5-foot-tall Snoopy statues placed all over the city.
I remember seeing pictures of those.
And naturally, the ultimate home for his legacy is the Charles M. Schulz Museum and Research Center in Santa Rosa, right near his old studio. But maybe the best summary of his overall impact comes from another giant of cartooning, Bill Watterson.
The creator of Calvin and Hobbes. What did Watterson say?
Watterson said that Peanuts pretty much defines the modern comic strip.
Defines it. That's high praise. What did he mean by that, do you think?
I think he was pointing to that unique combination Schulz perfected. the deceptively simple, clean art style. The ability to blend sophisticated, often sarcastic, humor with genuine emotion, that unflinching honesty about failure and anxiety, and, importantly, pioneering the massive scale of merchandising that became tied to cartoon characters. Schulz basically created the template for the modern, introspective, yet commercially huge comic strip. Everyone who came after had to react to what he'd done. He set the bar.
So we've done this deep dive, look through all these sources on Charles M. Schulz. And what really stands out is this incredible, powerful, and really nuanced picture. You see this profound connection between his own life, shy, kind of withdrawn, carrying that melancholy from his mother's death, the sting of the little red-haired girl's rejection, his wrestling with faith, his professional self-doubts,
Yeah.
and how he somehow managed to package all that complexity into these incredibly simple drawings, these clean lines. He created something with mass appeal that generated billions, shaped childhoods globally, but was always rooted in his own very specific, often sad experiences.
He was this major figure, right? Highly honored, owned an ice rink, had his characters literally go to the moon. Yet right up until that very last moment with the football, he never stopped seeing himself as Charlie Brown. That fundamental tension, the billionaire artist who was still the kid who couldn't kick the ball, that's why the work still hits so hard, I think. For you listening, for all of us. It feels true.
And just as a final thought, something to maybe chew on that builds on all this complexity. The sources mentioned that Schultz's actual home in Santa Rosa, the place he lived and worked for decades, was destroyed in the Tubbs fire back in 2017.
Oh, I'd forgotten about that. Tragic.
It is. And there's such a deep, almost painful irony there, isn't it?
Yeah.
The man who built this entire empire based on drawings of a simple little doghouse. A man whose characters constantly grappled with existential fears, with the randomness and cruelty of fate, ultimately saw his own home just wiped out by this massive, uncontrollable force of nature. What does that final, unexpected loss add to the story? To the man who said humor comes from bad things happening. It feels like it just underscores, even after his death, how the melancholy and the profound honesty of his life remain completely tangled up with his art.